How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation, and after the single topic video earlier in the week, we are back to the regular 3-topic news videos. Starting out with Sony is finally doing it. Rest in peace, PS4. That thing is finally being sunset, and I think largely this is a good thing. Second on the list, we all know the situation with games on the PS5 Pro, and it's not great, mainly with Konami games, and we just got a new update that basically puts all of the blame on Konami, so I want to know why they don't fix their PS5 Pro games. And finally, sticking with Bloober Team and Konami, we now know what Bloober Team is working on next, and I'm pretty excited about it, even with the context of their last release. So yeah, let's jump into the first news story here because this one's really interesting. So Sony has been very quietly kind of killing off the PS4 over a very long extended period of time. It's still getting software updates, it's still getting game releases once in a while, but if you compare where the PS4 is at now to where it was at during the beginning of this PS5 generation, at the beginning of the generation, the PS4 was like the Xbox Series S to the PS5. You were getting basically every game on PS5, also on PS4 at a discount, and for the most part, a lot of the games were looking and running great, and that went all the way up to the release of Resident Evil 4 Remake, which, you know, ran worse than the other Resident Evil games like 7, Village, 2 Remake, 3 Remake on the PS4, but if you had a PS4 Pro, it wasn't that much worse where you were a moron if you bought the game on PS4 instead of going out and buying a PS5 for it. Ever since Resident Evil 2, they've really just slowly started the descent of the PlayStation 4, and they've been quietly removing it from sale in some regions, they've quietly been reducing the price, and they've quietly been, you know, just making sure that people are kind of pushed in the direction of the PlayStation 5, and of course that all started when, you know, you could actually get a PS5 from a store and not a scalper. So like, they want people on the PS5 now, they want those PS5 numbers up, and it seems like it's working, right? Like, even with all the price increases, even with you know, the numbers being a little bit below PS4, which is definitely influenced by the beginning of the lockdowns and everything where they couldn't make enough PS5s to actually get them in people's hands, the PS5 seems to be thriving in the back half of its generation, even from the game side, with stuff like Death Stranding 2, Ghost of Yotei now with all of its great reviews, and the upcoming Wolverine game on top of everything else. So we're sitting in a good spot. And it seems like Sony feels the same way because they just released a software update for the PlayStation 4 that disables a lot of its online interaction features, so like activity screens, seeing what your friends are doing, seeing updates from the PlayStation Store, like all of the notification feed style stuff that you would kind of get info on in the PlayStation app. They're turning off a lot of those online service features for the PlayStation 4, and if you look back in history, when they start doing that to stuff like the PS Vita, the PS3, even the PSP, that means they're getting ready for a bigger push to finally sunset the machine and eventually stop selling it in stores. The interesting thing is, unlike past generations where we got the PS3 Super Slim, you know, the one that looked really weird, it looked like a mix between the PS3 Slim and the PS3's launch model, where it had the same shape as the launch model, but it was slim like the Slim, and it had that sliding disc tray on top. That came out way late in the generation. Going back to the PS2 era, right around the time that the PS3 was starting to get announced and be ready for release, they released a $99 version of the PS2 called the PS2 Super Slim. We never got a PS4 Super Slim. They're still selling the original PS4. I don't think they're selling the PS4 Pro, or if they are, it's just back stock, and they're not marketing it at all to people as something that they can go to the store and still buy these days. But for all intents and purposes, they really just stopped working on the PS4 in favor of just selling where they ended up towards the tail end of the generation, while they still developed games for it. And you guys already know my thoughts on this. The PS5, even with its lack of true first-party, actual PS5 only games, has been the best place to play games for this entire generation. The cross-generational games have run amazing on the PS5 because if they are able to be on PS4, it's usually enough headroom on the PS5 to get them at higher resolutions and 60 FPS. The console itself is rock solid. It has none of the hardware issues I've been plagued with in the PS3 and PS4 generations. Even before all these insane price increases, they've been selling it at a great price, sometimes even below $400. You can still get used launch models, you can get refurbished launch models for great prices. So like, even without the big first-party releases that traditionally get people to jump ship on the last generation of console and move up to the next generation of console, I think they've done a good job on both the hardware and software side, kind of justifying the existence of the regular PS5. The Pro is a different story. We'll talk about that in the second news story. So like, if you haven't bought a PS5 yet, I literally have no idea what you've been waiting for. Now I'd understand it because of the price of the PS5. I think you just have to wait for it to come down to an acceptable level or go for for a refurbished model, a used model on eBay, a used model on Facebook, or, you know, any other avenue you have to get it for the original price or less. But at this point, I don't think that classic price reduction we've always been able to rely on is coming. I think the PS5 is going to stay at its MSRP price where it's at now, or maybe back down to like 500 and 400 for the digital model towards the end of the generation. I think that's where it's going to stay. I don't think it's going any lower than that outside of like Christmas sales, bundle sales, or anything like that. And then leading into the PS6 generation, I think the PS6 is probably going to be $100 more than the PS5 at minimum. So $600 for the disk drive model and $500 for the disk driveless model. And then they're going to keep the PS5 regular at either like $400 and $450, or just eliminate it entirely in favor of the PlayStation 6 if they can get the price low enough. So like, I don't know what the move is, but I'm glad to see them kind of moving on from the PlayStation 4 because it's well past time. I'm fine with a new generation coming out and abandoning the old generation. I know some people want their stuff to be updated and usable for decades into the future. That's just not realistic. If you play on PC, you can't use the same graphics card for 20 years. If you play on Xbox, you can't keep your Xbox 360 around for 20 years. If you play on Nintendo Switch, eventually you're going to have to upgrade, and that's just the way it is. And the whole point of a console is that it's cheaper than investing in a big beefy PC. So if you want to stay current with the current gen games that are going to take advantage of the latest graphics, the latest tech, the latest frame rates, and everything else, you're just simply going to have to upgrade. And I think there's really no negative way to look at how long you got out of your PS4. So at this point, your options are wait for the PS6 and let your backlog build up for the PS6's launch, or go for some of the used market prices on the PS5 and again take advantage of the backlog of PS5 games that you've built up over the past couple of years. But either way, at the end of the day, you're going to be playing some good games. Unfortunately, what I would avoid at this point in time, because the hardware is great, is the PS5 Pro. For the price they're charging and the level of quality we've gotten out of games played on it, it's just not working out for me. I'm happy with my purchase because the games I choose to play on it have largely been fine, like Gran Turismo 7, The Crew Motorfest, Space Marine 2, Chronos The New Dawn. All of those have been largely success stories on the PlayStation 5 Pro, but for those handful of games that work great on the Pro, the list of games that have major problems on the Pro that they don't have on the regular PS5 grows seemingly by the month. And in my opinion, at least, I'm a little biased because I love horror games. The shining example of negativity when it comes to the PS5 Pro and how games run on it is, of course, Silent Hill 2. Bloober Team really left me hanging with that game because in terms of quality and being a good remake, I think they knocked it out of the park. In terms of performance, and specifically the patch that they released for the PS5 Pro, a lot is left to be desired, and it's kind of borderline unforgivable to me that they abandoned the game, and they just don't seem like the studio that would do that. They've stuck with games in the past. I played Layers of Fear through early access. I played Layers of Fear 2 through early access. I played the vast majority of their games when they weren't ready, and they always delivered at the end of the day. So that PS5 Pro patch being a shining example of a game being abandoned, it just never really made sense to me. And now in their investor call, they were specifically asked about the PS5 Pro performance of the game, which is interesting. And what they said is that it's up to Konami. After they released the game, development went back in-house to Konami. So they're just sitting there, not patching the game and just leaving it in the state that it's in. And I don't understand why, because they keep doing this. They did it with Metal Gear Solid Delta. Every game that Konami has released, like Silent Hill F as well, has major issues on the PS5 Pro. And for some reason, they just seem content to leave it that way. And again, I just don't understand why. One reason could be, you know, that gaming is by no means the biggest moneymaker for Konami. Their biggest moneymaker is slot machines. And when you're talking about gambling, you make way more money on gambling than you do on single player games. Like, they have no live service games outside of Pro Evolution Soccer, and their whole live service reinvention of that, I would guess, didn't go that well. So in terms of games, releasing the game means you spent the money you've budgeted, and everything you have left over is money you can then reinvest into other games. Of course, the games run fine on the regular PS5, and there aren't a lot of PS5 Pros out there. So for them, just looking at it cynically on the checks and balances sheet, they're probably saying it's not worth the investment to fix the PS5 Pro. Also, Sony probably told them that PSSR is amazing. You can just drag and drop its implementation in your games and everything works. So as far as they're concerned, they're probably looking at Sony as to why PSSR doesn't work right in these games and waiting for an update on that. And then when it comes to PSSR on top of that, Sony's been in public saying that it's getting a huge upgrade that's going to evolve it to FSR4 next year. So why would Konami want to spend extra money to fix the current version of PSSR when a new version they can drag and drop in is coming early next year, and then they can do a victory lap with a bunch of big updates to all their games like Metal Gear Solid Delta, Silent Hill F, and Silent Hill 2 Remake. Now, just because all of those reasons explain it doesn't make it right. I think they should have held all these games back until they were ready to go for both the regular PS5 and PS5 Pro, because on top of the PSSR issues, all of them have major frame rate issues. The performance modes are nowhere near 60 FPS. You can drop all the way down to 30 FPS in performance mode on both PS5 and PS5 Pro when you go into water. Sometimes it even goes below 30 FPS down to 24. It seems like they're rushing their games out and just using Unreal Engine 5 for the monetary benefits you get, like not having to pay royalties until you sell 1 million copies of the game or whatever. Like, from every metric, they're just looking at this cynically, and I think they deserve to be criticized for that, because like, a lot of these games are extremely good. Like, Silent Hill 2 is a good and faithful remake. Metal Gear Solid Delta is a good and faithful remake. Silent Hill F is a new original game from Konami, and it's largely getting good reviews outside of the Souls-like combat and the fact that you have to beat it 4 or 5 times to see the completed ending. So, like, they're getting good reviews, they're selling well. Why wouldn't you want your games to be seen in the best light possible and start patching your games? But really, I don't think Bloober Team is blameless either. We've seen so many examples of developers taking it upon themselves to actually fix their products. I mean, just recently, Baldur's Gate 3 got a full native Steam Deck version released on Steam that was made by one developer at Larian, and the performance improvements across the board were insane. Like, in Baldur's Gate, the actual city, you couldn't get more than 17 FPS running the Windows version on Steam Deck before, and now it's a rock-solid 30 FPS across the board using the native Steam Deck version. And if Bloober Team really cared about Silent Hill, I think they would do the exact same thing outside of Konami barring them from doing it. So it does kind of feel like a cop-out mistake, but it's gone from unforgivable tier to just annoying tier. And I hope eventually it gets fixed, but just based on what we're hearing from Konami and knowing that they've done this multiple times, I'm not holding my breath. I think the only thing we can look forward to is maybe when the upgraded version of PSSR is released, then they go back, drag and drop it in, and call it a day, and then we cross our fingers that it actually fixes a lot of the issues that we've had with all these games. But that's an interesting update as to why Bloober Team hasn't gone back and fixed Silent Hill 2, and why Konami in the studio they hired to make Metal Gear Solid Delta probably will do the exact same thing. But that blemish on Bloober Team aside, they did share an update into their future, and that's pretty exciting. So Chronos the New Dawn just came out, and I think it sold decent. They said it's a massive success in their earnings call, but if they're talking to investors, I mean, you're going to fudge that a little bit. You're going to make it seem as good as possible. But if they're looking at it as a successful new IP, that's really all that matters. So they were asked about a sequel, and they said, yeah, we'd love to expand this universe, and we plan on doing it in the future. But right now, every team member that they have in their studio, both teams that work on AAA games, are working on the Silent Hill 1 remake. And that's really exciting to me because, unlike Silent Hill fans on Twitter, I've actually played the vast majority of the Silent Hill catalog. I played them back when they came out. I played them on the re-release when they did the terrible HD version that used Comic Sans and had to rebuild a lot of Silent Hill 2. I think Silent Hill 1 is by far the best in the entire series. Just from a story perspective, from a gameplay perspective, it's just like the ideal sort of game for me. So hearing that that one's getting a remake is exciting to me because it's definitely aged the worst out of all of them. I played the original Silent Hill 2 every Halloween for the better part of a decade at this point, and I've tried to do the same thing for the original Silent Hill, and it's just much harder because it is a PS1 game. So knowing we have that to look forward to is extremely exciting, of course, but I also don't think we're going to have long to wait for it because they know how to make a Silent Hill game at this point, and even Chronos the New Dawn takes a lot in terms of level design from Silent Hill, so that's 2 games in a row that they've been able to kind of flex their muscles in terms of making a good Silent Hill game. And of course, it is a remake, so they use Unreal Engine 5, they reutilize a lot of the assets from Silent Hill 2 to rebuild the town of Silent Hill. I think this could come out a lot sooner and quicker than we saw Silent Hill 2 take to make, and that's exciting because I feel like the survival horror games just aren't coming out fast enough for me. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in this news update. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.